Aurora Light, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Loved having your husband William on the show recently, and love those interviews you did with Alfred Weber. And it's a pleasure to have you on. Very fascinating things for you to talk about. A lot of it maybe unverifiable, but no reason to believe you don't know what you're talking about. No reason to believe that you're not being sincere. You came across as very knowledgeable, and very glad to have you as a guest on the show. So without further ado, I'd like you to take all the time you need. I promise not to interrupt you. Your life story, and if you want to just go straight into it, since you just asked me, then after your life story, the whole thing about the Earth quarantine. Go right ahead. I promise not to
Well,
interrupt.
I'd like to introduce myself to the group, and that is my name is Aurora Light, as Andrew has mentioned, and I really welcome the opportunity to share with Andrew's audience, all of you out there, about myself. I am what is called a futurist and a spiritual and cosmic ambassador. I'm the co author of Prepare for the Landings, and that book is about human appearing extraterrestrials. And it's about our cosmic heritage and the divine plan for the planet. Our planet has a golden age coming up here of peace and abundance for all that many of us here feel intuitively is about to come about. We're working towards that right now. And when I was 6 years old, the government approached me and wanted me to be recruited for their deep state child programs. I denied any interest in it whatsoever and sent them on their way because I wanted to have a childhood, frankly, and I didn't want to be somebody's lab rat. And it just didn't sound enticing to me. I didn't think anything good could come of it for myself. I just didn't want to be part of it. And so that was my first inclination that the government would actually be interested in my intelligence, who I am, and I thought was that was interesting. When I was called into the principal's office with two men in black sitting there waiting for me, because I took a test in the first grade that every child in the United States takes. And at 6 years old, I took that test, and a couple of weeks later, I got the call to the principal's office, and I thought, oh God, now what did I get caught doing? Because I was always getting in some little trouble for this or that, some little rule or regulation or something that I was skirting around. So I thought, oh God, now what? When I saw these two men in black waiting for me there in his office, I thought, well, no matter what they say, nothing good can come of this because either way, I'm going to be giving up my freedom and my autonomy. And I didn't want to give that up. And so when they told me, I asked, when I came into the room, because I was demanded to come into the room by my principal, he asked me to please step in. I said, well, what are they doing here? And he said, oh, we'll tell you all about it. Just come in. You're not in any trouble. Don't worry about it. And I thought to myself, well, let's see. And so while I was sitting there staring at the men in black, my principal said, remember that test you took a couple of weeks ago? And I looked at my principal. I said, yes. I said, I think I actually did quite well on it. I said, I finished the test before all the other kids in the class, had to wait a long time for them to finish. And then I looked at the two men in black and I thought, well, take that, you know. And so they looked at me and they said, oh, you did quite well, all right. And they said, you did better than any child your age has ever done. Now, I don't know if they were just saying that to flatter me and they say that to everybody or if it was true. I couldn't tell you. But I thought, well, that's interesting. And I said, but I said, I really don't know anything. I just guessed at the answers. And they said, yes, but you guessed correctly. And I said, yeah, that's true. I probably did. And they said, and I said, but I don't want to go to any special school. So I will just go back to my classroom and remain with my class until I'm out of here in 12 years. And that's it. I said, I'm not going off with anybody to any special school. And my dad told me he didn't want to pay for any fancy private school for me. And, they told me I was a child genius. And I said, yes, I already knew that. And thank you very much for stopping by. And I basically became like the CEO of the meeting, stood up, dismissed myself, said goodbye, thank you for coming, and walked out on them. So, but it didn't stop there. They started tracking me after that, and they started treating me with fluoride in elementary school to numb me out, to numb out the third eye, which is the intuitive psychic center of the being. And because of that, I wound up having bone problems later in life with mushy bones from the fluoride eating away and decaying my bones and my teeth crumbling and things like that because of the fluoride, which I was giving massive doses of in the public school I went to. I was called into the nurse's station and regularly treated with massive amounts of fluoride in big wads of cotton. They were about 5 inches long and inch thick and just laced, just completely saturated with fluoride. And they would stick two of those, one in the upper part of my mouth and one in the bottom part of my mouth, while the fluoride ran down my throat. It was just massive, massive dose. So I didn't know what the hell was going on when I was a little kid with the fluoride. I just thought I had great teeth, and that's why I was getting special preferential treatment with the fluoride. So when I got older and realized what the heck was going on with our government and the fact that they would actually give the public an aluminum derivative that was used as a rat poisoning and was also put in the wells of Russia before the Bolshevik Revolution took place to numb out the constituents there, the public, to numb them out and dumb them down. And that's what it is. It's a numbing and dumbing agent that they found that, used in certain amounts has that effect and makes people very docile and easy to lead. And that's what they want humanity to be like. But there's a new plan that's coming in. The old is dying out for lack of support from the newer generations. And the younger generations haven't put up with it over in Europe. They have already outlawed fluoride. And it is the next step for us to do and demand as citizens of the United States that this fluorinating our waters be stopped. And I have stood up for it now for decades about this. And I'm a strong proponent against vaccinations, fluoride, chemtrails, and many of the other hideous programs that have been put in place that I consider to be extremely Orwellian in nature. And there is a Galactic Federation upstairs, and there is a war going on in space right over our heads. And there is a Luciferian Renegade element that has been working with our government and rolling out technologies that we've had since they began. The first being when they started in the 40s working together, the transistor radio, and that was one of the first things they gave them, the transistor. And that was the beginning of them starting to work together. And as our technologies completely did this huge jump in the 40s and 50s, that was when the interaction began with the renegade Greys Luciferian element. But the Federation will not give our government their technologies until our government agrees to what is called the Galactic Pact rules. And the Galactic Pact rules are against not offering help to anyone on the planet who is starving or suffering without shelter. Okay, that's a rule that you must help help the people on your planet to the best of your ability to have subsistence. And but our planet is deliberately designed to have limitations, to be limited, to dry up the farmlands with weather manipulation, which they've been doing, which Nick Baggage wrote the best book on it, about weather modification and mind control, called HARP. Angels don't play this harp. HAARP. And I interviewed Nick Baggage many times on my radio shows in Phoenix and other places through the decades. And I will tell you, that is a very serious, serious problem that we have going on in the deep state, is the chemtrails and the weather modification and the mind control, along with the poisoning of our food and water and air. So who would want to poison our planet? Just think about it, folks. Who would want to? Who would want to ruin paradise? You think it's the Federation, the Christed energies, the higher evolved beings? Or do you think it might be more of the renegade style to come in, trash a planet, bring it down to its knees, and then take over? And, that's what we see going on right now. Long introduction. But what is next on the agenda is the golden age, which we are going into because people are getting hip to the fact that this is what's going on is just really ridiculous, and it all needs to be turned around so it's an uplifting place to evolve on, rather devolving, like the Luciferians are a devolved race. The Greys, for example, that is not humans in the future. Like you've heard a lot of ET, UFO experts, and I use the word lightly, unless they've had contact and been aboard the ships, which I have, of the Federation. I will tell you they're beautiful, awesome places of happy love and light and evolved wisdom and arts and sciences and everything that you could dream of. But the Luciferian renegades do not respect that. They instead are more interested in devolving worlds. And the Greys are a devolved species. That's why they don't have individual looks very much to speak of, and they're hybrids. They're a hybrid kind of creation. And they have enamel bones, it's been said, and other characteristics that are unusual and can withstand the high radiation of their ships. The Federation ships do not carry high radiation, whereas the Renegade ships do operate on a whole different system. And the Federation technology is very precious and well guarded by the Federation for that reason, because they don't want the Luciferian Renegades to get a hold of this technology. And there is a war going on in space right above our heads right now, which you can readily see with night vision glasses if you're at the right place in the right time, which I happened to be one time. I was with a group of ufologists in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at a UFO conference and technology conference there called the Extraordinary Technology Conference. And all the speakers were there, and I was with one of the speakers there, William Alec, Bill Alec, who you had on your show. And while we were there, we all went out to the pool in the evening, and Ed Grimsley, who was the owner of numerous pairs of night vision glasses, which would take groups of people out to see the UFOs and the war in space. And so he broke open his setup there, and he He broke open his setup and he set it up there so that he had a big, huge screen that was up. It was like a 8 by 10 foot screen. It was gigantic outside. You think you were in a drive-in movie theater. It was so big. And then he was able to project the images from it that he received it through his night vision glasses onto that screen. And lo and behold, right after he set it up, we started seeing movement, unusual movement. And then we saw two fractions. Are you there, Andrew? Can you hear me okay?
I am on mute, but I am here.
Okay, good. All right, just jump in if ever you want to stop me about anything. Um, so we watched a war taking place right over our heads. Two fractions coming at each other. One was blowing up the other one, and they would disappear when they were hit. They would literally, you'd see them just go disappear. It was interesting. And we thought, wow, look at this. And it was an education to know that a war could be going on right over our heads without us knowing about it. And then we thought about the quarantine that's been placed on this planet. The fact that it's culturally quarantined, this planet, from the other worlds. And the other people on other worlds are not allowed to openly visit here. And we thought about why would this quarantine be in place? And as I studied the scriptures and I studied metaphysical literature down through the ages, and as well as my own experiences that I began to have, I realized that we were part of a galactic community that is very vast, and that we are more or less a lesser evolved planet in the system. We are not one of the more advanced planets with the most advanced technology. But we're working towards it because God wants us to emancipate ourselves. Because this cultural quarantine is meant to end at some point. And it's meant to end in a good way, hopefully. You've heard of Armageddon, everybody has, correct?
Yes,
So,
and a little debate over what it actually is. Armageddon, is that, question about that? Is that the same as apocalypse? Can the two words be interchanged, or is there meant to be a distinct difference between the terms
well,
Armageddon and
in my
apocalypse?
mind, and I think in the minds of most people, they're simultaneously interchangeable.
Okay.
And where it gets to a point of despair, and because something horrible has happened, okay, and then the planet's thrown into chaos and suffering. We've all had those images literally stuffed down our throat for the last 50 years. So does it have to go that way? No, it doesn't. It does not have to play out that way. In fact, it says in Revelations of the Bible very clearly. It says these things do not have to come to pass if a higher path is taken and the divine path is chosen by mankind. These things can be avoided. This was like if we don't bring this planet out of chaos. If we don't bring it out, then we will roll it in that direction. Many people think that we're living in a time now that some of us have come from the future because we didn't like how things turned out here on Earth. We came as rescue units in from the future because we wanted to change the path of Earth's course. Some could be said to be from the future. Some people have had these deja vu experiences that have been analyzed and given accreditation. So Andrew Brishago, who you may know, do you know Andrew? Bishago?
interviewed the guy when he ran for third-party presidential ticket in the last election, but as Andrew Bart says, the Cosmic Records reader has once said, Andrew Bishago, the president, pigs will fly before that happens. But a lovely thought
Well,
indeed. But I have no
you
reason to
know,
believe he's faking the time travel stuff. I think he's very honest about that, and he came across as honest when I had him on my show, and also the Mars stuff.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Andrew is a real thing. I've known him for quite some time. And, his idea of becoming president, you know, may have been a viable idea at some point, but, he ran into a lot of health issues that kind of waylaid his aggressiveness and to be able to accomplish that. But he, I think that at one time he could have been a very viable option, 25 years ago. But the world is it ready for somebody out of the box? And so that's, Trump is. Do you, I okay? I have to. Can I tell you a story about Donald Trump that I haven't shared in public before?
Sure, why not? And so you know something about him that you won't tell until now.
Right.
Okay.
So it was in 2015. I was in Florida, and it was June 16th, and I had just come back from being out for the evening with an old friend of mine there in Sarasota, Florida, where I used to live near Siesta Key Beach, which is a very incredible place on Earth. It is the world's largest vortex. Oh my God, it's this huge amount of white crystal sand. It's 99.9% quartz crystal. And when you walk on that, it's been said that if you walk on that sand every day for 6 months, you'll be cured of any illness. And I've known people who believe that to be true. When I lived there a lot, I saw a lot of things going on. So, the whole thing about Trump. So so I have never voted in my life because I can't stand most politicians and I'm very psychic. And I can see the truth about most people very readily. So when all of a sudden I'm standing there, she flipped on the TV when we came on, and Trump came on, and I got this tap on my shoulder from my friends upstairs. And they said, pay attention like that. I said, what? What? Like that. Back to him. This is all telepathic. And they said, pay attention. Donald Trump's announcing his candidacy for presidency. And I said sarcastically, yeah, so I was playing with their heads a little bit, and they said, so I said, so who is he? Like that. And they said, well, he's one of us. I said, really? I said, who is he then? Upstairs. Then they said, well, he's Archangel Michael's kid brother. And I said, really? And they said, yes. And I said, what more can you tell me of him? And they said, that's it for now, except for these things. He will be president for 2 terms. And I said, well, how can he ever become president? Because you know how they flip the votes on the voting machines electronically. And they said, upstairs, they said, well, we can flip digits too. And I said, well, good, because you're going to have to. And I said, what about murder? They like to assassinate people they don't agree with. And they said, they will not be allowed to harm a hair on his head. He will have full protection from upstairs. For it's divine will. He's God's trump card. God is pissed off about this way this planet's been going, and especially the United States as well, in particular. And he has been set to set things correct. And I said, well, then I guess I'll be registering to vote for the first time. And of all things, I guess I'm going to have to register for the Republicans. And I said, because I really don't have any choice here in the matter. And I began going to the rallies here in Phoenix. And at first, there was just, a few hundred of us. And then there became a few thousand. And then there became many thousands, many, many, many thousands. And I think that he has been a spectacular president, that he has done so much for this country. Do I think he's been able to handle all the problems that we have in his this time given? Not yet, but I do think he has worked through quite a few of them, and I do think in the second term some heads are going to roll of some evildoers who have ripped this country off for billions of dollars through secret ways of giving grants of money, large sums of money to countries, and then taking some of that money back on the back end, which the Bidens were caught doing. So I really don't have any affiliation for any party until I voted for Trump, but because I like to think of myself as an independent thinker, but I did like it that he was an outsider as well, that he didn't give a damn about adhering to their protocols, and that he was going to do what was right for the country in spite of what price he might personally pay.
Okay, hold on. I got to stop you there for a moment. Shortly after the election, David Icke went public and said, all of you who think Donald Trump is not an insider, I think you may need a little bit of a wake-up call, and I need
Right.
to address a couple things with you here. David Icke
Yes,
did
I've
a very
heard
good
Ike's.
job
I've heard Ike's
exposing, yeah,
interview.
about, the whole thing about um, Israel controlling Trump behind the scenes, and Henry Kissinger telling Donald Trump in that meeting a couple years ago, "Do what my minions and me tell you to do, or you and your family and business partners will be dead." A couple people said that's for all intents and purposes what Kissinger told Donald Trump. And another thing about Trump that really is making people chomp at the bit about what he may be going to do for us in the near future, the whole thing about his uncle um, knowing all about Nikola Tesla's technology because he was one of the people who took it after Tesla died in the hotel room. So, do you have
Well,
anything to say about these issues?
the backgrounds of people, cannot be held always against them. It only takes one person to tarnish a reputation, right? Or one deed. And, all I know is that the people who are around him, who work with him, say that he always tries to do the best thing for everyone and concerned. They've never known him to be underhanded or conniving. Okay. So I can tell you that much. And, I hear all these stories all the time about evil Israel. And I hear all the stories all the time about evil in every realm of our society, to be frank with you, whether it be the Christians. If you read the book, for example, The Transformation of America by Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips. Have you ever interviewed them?
No, asked a couple questions when they were at conferences that I had a chance to get interactive with, but never
Right.
interviewed.
I lectured with them at many conferences, where I was present lecturing on the human appearing ETs and the cover up on that. And they were there sharing their information. And I happen to think that what they're saying is actually incredibly accurate. I don't find any discrepancies in anything they've ever said. And I find it to be accurate. And so I think we do have this evilarchy that has existed in our society that Jeffrey Epstein was part of, and a lot of them. Okay. And how deep and ugly it gets, we don't really even know yet. We've heard of Alex Jones talk about, the place out there with the owl. What's it called there in Northern
Bohemian
California?
Grove. Yeah, I saw his documentary where he snuck in there. Yes.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove, for example. Okay. And then I've talked to people who tried to get into politics, who told me unless that they became swingers as a couple, or and homosexuals and bisexuals and all this stuff, that they weren't going to be allowed in. And so I have been directly told that by numerous people who tried to get into politics, that they just couldn't get by the evilarchy that was controlling things. So I don't know as if David Icke is 100% accurate, because, first of all, David was with a gal out of Sedona who he was, married to, I guess, for a while. And she was a mind control project. And she told me all about it. So, you know, David, he really has a very dark opinion about most people and most things, and how accurate all of it is subject to question. Okay, and I don't think that David Icke has always been 100%. Even looking back on his career of the last 30 years, and I have known him quite well, and some things he has, decided that finally to recognize that there is a higher spiritual path that we can choose.
Well, I've criticized
And
the guy for talking about making a conspiracy out of almost everything, it seems, although he does throw the consciousness and metaphysical stuff in there as a sort of solution, of course, to all the bad stuff that he seems to obsess about more than one would think would be, can arguably make the case is healthy for someone to obsess about. But yes, it's
there is a reason our society has been devolving. There's a ugly hand at work behind the scenes, you know?
yeah, and the extent to which the higher forces have been taken out. I want to get into that for a moment because you talk about this war that's going on above our heads that we
Right.
can't see with our naked eyes, but it's there. Um, well, Alex Collier, he appeared on the Goldfish Report not that long ago, a couple months maybe ago, mentioning something about how the Alpha Draconian overlords are gone from Earth and they've kind of
Yeah, that's
abandoned.
bullshit.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Oh my God, yes. If the heavens are cleansed, we'd sure as hell know it. We would know it, believe me. It wouldn't be a secret. Yeah, the divine plan it's being worked out, but it's almost, I can only describe it as a Shakespearean play where, the good side revs up and comes forward, and then it gets pushed back, and then the bad side gets pushed back, and it's this back and forth push and pull on humanity, to try, the one side trying to elevate, and the other side trying to destroy, you know, and capture and control. And what they can't control, they'll destroy, and that that attitude has got to go. And I think the younger generation see it and they feel it deep in their souls, and they want to get rid of that fraction that is constantly tugging and pulling humanity downward with their entertainment, which is violent and lusty and all the lower elements of mankind all the time, greed and the inability to have abundance, and because there's scarcity all the time, and all that negative programming. It's got to go. People should stop feeding that beast, because completely stop feeding it. Stop going to those films. Stop supporting them in any way. It's got to end. It's a Luciferian attitude. It's a very negative space to hold for humanity. The only space we can hold for humanity that's going to work for everybody is a space that people, desire to evolve in a way that's more peaceful and I don't see how we're going to do this with this Islamic fraction that's coming in and with a massive hatred towards the United States that has been stirred up by Luciferian fractions that wanted to go in there and bomb the hell out of them, take all their treasures they had in the museums and all those things. Oh, yeah. They raided those countries. Okay. And, they're going in there raiding the hell out of them, taking all their gold and jewels and assets and, going into their mines and taking what they can and all that. And that part's never talked about. But, yeah, they're the spoils of war, as they call them. Yeah, that's going on. And, so now we've stirred up a lot of hatred going in there and destroying people's sovereign countries and displaced millions of people who are now in Europe, destroying France, Germany, England, many countries, Sweden, destroying their old way of living with coming in and not disrespecting their culture completely, having no affinity for it whatsoever. And that's what the dark forces wanted. They wanted to displace all these people, shove them down our throats, and because they knew they would not assimilate. They knew they couldn't assimilate very easily and that they would stir up hatred and resentment amongst those who have to put up with all these displaced people coming in and using up their resources. Meanwhile, they've cleared out the Middle East. They've gone in there and pilfered and taken everything they want and made billions and billions of dollars on the wars. For example, the Heinz Corporation, Kerry's wife, she caters all the United States wars and all the bases around the world. Her catering company, the Heinz Corporation. So there's billions and billions being made behind the scenes, and they want to talk about Trump owning some hotels or going to visit Israel or something like that. Yeah, right. But meanwhile, don't look over here because over here is where it's really going on, where the actual billions are changing hands constantly. And just to pay for the war, the food for the wars and all that is a huge amount of money that the Heinz Corporation has collected. So we could go on, as to the wars and the reasons why behind them. But when I was a little kid, I turned to my dad. I was 7 years old, and it was going to be the election year in 1956, and it was 1955, and they were arguing amongst each other, the Democrats and Republicans, in their debate on TV. And I turned to my father and I said, "So, Dad, are we Democrat or are we Republican?" And he kind of chuckled and he said, "We're not either one." And I said, "Don't you like either one?" And he said, "No, I don't." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because they're all crooks." And I said, "Oh, isn't there anyone we like?" He said, "I'm afraid not." And I said, "Well, that's really a bummer." I said to him, "I have no one to cheer for." And he said, "Well, get used to it." And really, that has been the state of affairs in the United States for the last 60 years.
On a lot of
Yes.
other countries too, I'm sure. But
Yeah, we've been getting bitch slapped.
I'd like to talk about for a moment. You mentioned the whole thing about people's ways of living being um, ruined with like immigrants coming into countries that are not really compatible with their belief system and all that.
Well, they can't afford to hospitalize them, take care of them, assimilate them. It's just overwhelming.
There seems to be possibly a solution of sorts coming in the couple of years. I recently saw a video where a brilliant Argentinian indigo child, Matias De Stefano, mentioned that from now up until late 2022, there is going to be going on planet Earth some interfacing with the geometric dodecahedron grid of such around the Earth that the pyramid structures are connected with, which is supposed to allow for everyone on Earth to, for all intents and purposes, just get along a little better than they otherwise would if that structure was not created. And well, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have any
All
idea
right,
what he's
so
referring
here's the
to?
answer.
Okay.
We must have abundance. For without abundance, there will always be the greed factor. You have to have enough for everyone. Otherwise, somebody is going to say, hey, why do you have what I need and what I want? And so there's always got to be this level there that has to be attained by everyone in order for everyone to get along. It's got to be a win-win. It can't be a win-lose. Nobody wants to be on the losing end of the stick. So, with our internet as prevalent as it is, everyone wants to live the good life. And how are we going to be able to make that happen? Well, we're going to need to have, first of all, enough food for everybody, but and water and housing and education, but also a birth control method that don't make it such a difficulty to support a society, like a perfect example being China and India and Africa, where they've got mass populations of starving people due to the infrastructure being so poor. So until you can afford to create an infrastructure that supports a large population, you have to curtail a large population from existing. And I think a lot of that was that Georgia Stone that so many people have been talking about, don't you?
Yes, I know that a thing on the Georgia Stone about the number of 50 million, I think it was, keep Earth's balance at 50 million people. And yeah, is that right?
I forgot the exact number, but it was really basically doing away. And you've heard of those meetings they have in Brazil, where they talk about. I'm trying to think of what it's called, climate aid or whatever they call it. You know what I'm talking about? Down there in Brazil, where they get together and they plan out the agenda for the planet. And they keep talking about population reduction. Well, if you don't have the money to feed yourself and you're having children and they're not able to be fed, we've got a real issue. So one of the things that I want to work on in my life is I lectured all over the world on human appearing ETs because I've had these experiences with them where they came in and saved my life when I was about to crash into 5 lanes of traffic. And when I was 16 years old, and I was about to broadside a woman with 3 kids in her car. And I prayed to God to please intervene and not let me kill these people. And with that, there was divine intervention. And my car was moved to another location. And their lives were spared. And I was so grateful. And then I wondered, who did this? I mean, how do you have this technology and how do you hear me? And how do you know I'm talking to you? I had a lot of questions afterwards about how this all worked, this divine intervention thing. And I was really wanted to know if, what it took to know them better, and understand the workings of the planet better. I wanted to grasp the significance of my life being saved at 16 in such a way that was profound and, you know, mind blowing to say the least, that they could teleport me instantaneously from the place of the intersection of the accident over lanes of traffic, parked me perfectly next to a gas station pump. And I didn't even feel a bump in the road. Nothing. It was instantaneous and it was like a flash. And that's what is called by many ufologists warping time and space. And that's what they did. They warped time and space. When I sat up off the floor of the car, because I threw myself down on the passenger side of the car, my head, and I was putting my arms over my head, waiting for the crashing to begin, because it was imminent, unless something incredible happened, which it did. So when I sat up to see where I was, because I didn't feel any noise, hear any noise at all, nothing, not a thing, and no movement. So I thought, okay, what had just happened? I've got to sit up and see. And I sat up off the floor of the car, and I looked around, and I saw I was parked next to this gas station, and all the cars around me, no one was moving. There wasn't a noise, a movement, nothing. And I thought to myself, well, gee, what's going on here? Why am I the only person moving? Why am I the only person here in this whole situation? And I was looking at the cars. I couldn't hear the cars. I could not hear them running. So it wasn't until years later that I found out about the time-space warping, where they can actually slice into time. They have the technology to do that. And they can stop something from happening. Which is quite profound if you think about it. And I said, okay. So I wanted a telepathic input from what was going on. So I asked him. I said, tell me what's happening right now. Who is doing this? And then this female voice said in my head, why don't you just chalk it up to divine intervention? Like that. And I said, divine intervention. Okay. Why did you save my miserable life when there's so many good people out there that die every day? And they said, you have a future that is important on the planet. You have a mission. And I said, okay, what's my mission? And they said, your mission will be revealed as time goes on. And it's part of the divine plan. And I said, okay. I said, make everything go back to normal. And then I sat there looking around and everything was still like frozen in time. And I looked to this man who was frozen walking back to his gas station. He was an elderly guy, this old gent. And he was kind of spry looking and slender, kind of gray haired dude. And he was stopped right in mid stride walking back to his gas station, frozen there. And no exhaust fumes, by the way, were even coming out of the car. That's how they splice the time space continuum. So I don't know how they do it, but they did it. And so I turned my head and I looked at him and I saw him and I said to him, hey, mister, fill her up. Would you? Like that. I wanted to see if I could get him a response out of him. And sure enough, he turned around. The car started back up again. Everything went back to normal. And I was relieved because I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. You know, the one step beyond was a popular show when I was a kid, in the Twilight Zone, you know, stuff. And I was thinking, oh man, this is weird. You know, I wanted to go back to normal. And so when he walked up to my window of my car, I was in a convertible. And he said to me, it was summertime, and he said to me, yeah, so what will it be? And I said, mister, did you hear my car pull in here? And he went, what? And I said, "Did you see me pull in here or hear my car pull in here?" He said, "Huh?" And I said, "Never mind. It's okay." I said, "Just fill it up. When God parks you next to the pump, you just fill it up." So I take the car back to my boyfriend's that night and pick him up from work where I was headed when all this happened. And I pick him up from work and and he says, "You're late 20 minutes. I told you not to be late anymore." I said, "I may be late, but I have a very good story to tell you. That's quite interesting." And he goes, so I told him my story. And afterwards I said to him, "Do you believe me?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Why is that you would believe such a bizarre story?" And he said, "Because you've never put any gas in my car ever before." He said it had to be divine intervention that parked you there. Which was
Yeah.
true. I had borrowed his car for a year and never put any gas in. That was the only time I ever did.
One,
Anyway,
I do want to ask you though, these entities that are divine intervention,
yeah.
what dimension, density, realm of consciousness do they come from? Are we talking about here? Is
Well,
there any
that's a
way to add
good
it?
question, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, when when you're on a different station on the radio, for example, you're not aware that it's a different frequency. You're just on a different station. That's how it is when I've been made invisible by them a couple times that I'm aware of for sure. That were important incidents, like one when I was on getting on an elevator in Detroit after giving a lecture across the nation in Chicago and other places, Las Vegas, Chicago, and then I was going to Detroit, where I'm from, and my great great uncle was Henry Ford and Walter Buell Ford, and so I have a background there in Detroit, and I usually go back and visit it periodically. And I was getting on an elevator, and there was these three guys there were already on the elevator, and I was getting on in the lobby. And you know how when you get on an elevator, everybody kind of adjusts themselves a little bit, like when another person gets in. And when I got in, there was no recognition that they even saw me get on. And I thought, this is weird. These three guys haven't even acknowledged I've walked in the elevator. It's so weird. And they were talking amongst themselves like I wasn't there. They said, one said, "Did you get all the donuts and coffee set up in our room?" And they said, "Yeah, same setup as at the airport." And then they said, "Have they checked in yet?" And the other one said, "Yeah, they're checked in. They're in the room below us." And they said, and I got off. There was only 4 floors at the hotel, and I got off at the 3rd floor, and they got off at the 4th. And I thought to myself, well, who else could they be talking about monitoring but me? Because who else would they want to monitor but a UFO lecturer? And I was lecturing all across the United States about being part of this federation, a volunteer here in Earth Embodiment. And the fact is, we are going to be going into a more culturally open program in the future. One way or another, we're going to be taken into it. And I think it's going to be in the peaceful fashion because people just do not want this suffering any longer. And we do have an element on this planet that is disruptive, but I think it can be overcome.
Yes, and when we're talking about the time frames of these things happening, word on the street is, Lyra gave one time frame with the thing that De Stefano, the Indigo Child, mentioned about the dodecahedron Earth grid structure being more active to make everyone get along better. There's also the idea that 2024 April, that solar eclipse that's in that time frame, signals the end of the time period that kind of began on the solar eclipse in August 2017, which is supposed to be the end of the Roman Empire, the modern era that is the United States. Well, how exactly is this going to come down? I mean, because we hear about the United States being the Roman Empire that's going to come down. Well, is it going to be all like worth celebrating like they did in the Star Wars movies after Darth Vader turned to the good side and threw Emperor Palpatine down in the reactor? I mean, and everybody on the planets were partying after that. Well, is it really going to be like that here in America?
No, I hope not. I think it'll be a little more gentle.
Okay, well, okay, I'm not talking about like killing people for freedom. What I mean is the way it's going to go down for the country. I mean, getting
Well,
back to
here's
Alex
what
Collier,
the
I
best
need.
case is, right?
Okay,
Yeah, let's go for the best case. Let's spin it uphill because everything's always in spin. Everything's always in flux. Everything's always in movement. Things don't stay the same for more than a moment, a fraction of a second. So everything's always changing. So as we're creating tomorrow, how do we create tomorrow? How do we do it the best way possible? Well, we create the best tomorrow that we can possibly create when we spin it uphill. And the way to do that is by choices you make every moment, moment to moment, and making yourself the best person you can be or know how to be. And if you do that every day, when you go to sleep at night, you may have some regrets once in a while that you didn't say this or didn't do that or said that or did this, and you're sorry and you're not going to do it again when you're contemplating your day at the end of the day, which I think is important for every person to do. And to say, where could I have excelled better? Where could I have, taken a better path? What did I handle everything as best as I could? As you gloss over your day and you learn from it. One of the things that you want to do is prepare yourself for the next moment, the next day, that you'll be required to react again to the stimuli in your environment. So as we react to stimuli, there's many different reactions we can have, millions of reactions. If somebody's charging you with hatred in their eyes and a knife in their hand, and they're larger than you, and they're stronger than you, what would you do? Okay. Well, many, many different reactions a person can have. For myself, when it happened to me, I chose to react with my mind of putting a mental capsule on the situation. And I spoke in words that were hypnotic to the adversary that wanted to be my assailant. And I said some words that were meant to throw the person off their center. And I said, it's getting late and you must go. Would you like another glass of wine? I was saying, and the rage that was all over this being, in his eyes, and his whole body dissipated instantaneously. And he went into a hypnotic spell. And I took over the situation and ushered him out the door before he could do any damage, and did not allow him to carry out his intentions. So another time, a black guy who had a gun in his hand jumped in the back seat of my car in Chicago with my girlfriend driving, and I was 15 and she was 16. And he had a gun pointed at us, and he said, drive, like that. And my girlfriend goes, what should I do? And I said, you probably should drive. Go ahead and drive a little bit. So I turned around, I looked him right in the eyes, and I said, so what's going on here? Like that. And he said, well, there was a crap game next door, and the police busted it, and I grabbed as much money as I could and threw it into this bag that was sitting there and ran out the back door. And I said, oh. And he said, and I just want to get out of this neighborhood because they're all coming in now. And he said, and I want to get someplace safe. He said, I said, well, where would you like to go? And so he said, turn right, turn left. And I said, okay. And then we got to the place he wanted to go. And I turned around and said to him, could I have $100? And he said, yes. And he handed me $100 bill and said, thank you, and got out of the car. And my girlfriend said, you're the only person I know can have a guy pull a gun on her and get $100 before it's over with. That's what I'm talking about, spinning it uphill.
Well, spinning it uphill. Funny. Well, it's funny you say that. I just got an email from Daniel T. He asked me about this place in Pennsylvania where cars seem to roll uphill when you put them in neutral. Okay, funny coincidence, or should I say, good synchronicity. Anyhow, wanted to mention.
So what I'm trying to say is there's a point to those stories.
Okay, if you want to continue, go ahead.
Okay, we influence reality tremendously. And we don't realize what a huge influence we are. So when, sometimes the road will seem like it's blocked, but it really isn't. It's just an illusion. And so we have to understand that we're creating reality. We're co-creators. Something can't happen if you don't allow it to happen. You're a co-creator with it. You're co-creating every instant. For example, two cars, I'll hear them screeching like they're going to crash. I'll hear them like, putting on their brakes, and I'll visualize them just stopping and not crashing. And then they don't. They never do. And then for example, cloud busting. Start with cloud busting. Pick like 6 different clouds out in the sky, 3 or 4 different clouds. Say, pick one to bust. And visualize yourself breaking up the cloud completely. Once you get good at that, you can work up to bigger things like, sending a hurricane, reducing the effectiveness of the mind control weather modification programs. So as you become more conscious of your environment and your effect you can have on it just with your thoughts. Here, there's another example I have to give your audience. Okay. So I'm at the Live at Who's concert in Montreal. There's 80,000 people crammed into this huge auditorium. We're up in the top in the press box. I'm there in the press box with this fellow Marcel Furland, who was the head of the Canadian press. So he took me up there with my friend I was in town with, my boyfriend, John Hartwig, who was moving to Montreal, and that's why we were there, to get him situated at La Coupe, the best hair salon in North America. So I got him a job there because I did my own hair, and I walked in, and they were so flabbergasted by my hairdo. They loved it so much, they hired me instantly. And I was in Louis Vuitton clothes, and I looked like a New York model. So this was back in my 20s when I was really rocking it big time. So I'm there at the Live at Leeds, just, feeling my oats. I'm in my 20s. I'm about 26, 27 years old. And I had already studied metaphysics, mind control, and hypnosis and some other things from the time I was a teenager. So I had heard about how the Who would start smashing up their guitars, and then there would be these riots, and that people were trampled to death recently. And I thought, oh my God, we don't want that to happen. So when they started smashing up their guitars, I said to my protege and lover at the time, John Hartwig, I turned to him and said, Marcelou was sitting between us, and I spoke over Marcelou, and I said to John, I said, the people are starting to panic. They're starting to riot. I said, put a powder blue light on all of them. So we both visualized a powder blue light go over the crowd. And the moment we did that, the exact instant we did that, every single person in that auditorium took a big, deep breath simultaneously. You could see it. It was a hive mentality. And then I said, hit them with a pink light. And the powder blue light is for peace. And the pink light is for love. And I hit him with the pink light, and so did John. And you saw them all take a second deep breath together simultaneously. And they all went back to their seats and sat down, and chaos was averted. And Marcel Lou turned to me and said, "My God in heaven," he said, "I have never seen such a display of power before in my life." He says, "This is incredibly astounding." And the next day, he sent me a couple dozen roses to my hotel and proposed marriage. All my stories have funny endings.
Well, if you don't hear me laughing, well, that's one, because I'm on mute, and two, I don't have much of a sense of humor anyway. It's kind of hard to get me to laugh. But
It's been that long since you laughed, eh?
yes, I don't know why that is.
You
But
have to have me on more often. I mean, even when Christ died, I mean, it was a sad moment, but 3 days later, people were laughing.
well, if he died for sins, you'd have to think that's going to be the unavoidable result.
I don't know. Well, you think, look at, if mankind hated somebody so gentle and kind so much, they wanted to see him crucified. And then 3 days later, he rises from the dead and walks amongst his people and makes them a fish dinner on the beach, which is recorded in historical documents. That's impressive.
Yes, it is. Um, and well, if you don't mind, can I switch gears for a moment? I want to
Any
talk
gear
about
you want is fine with me.
great. The technology gear. How about that? The site that you have here. The what is it? ISAindustries.com. Now, when we're talking about technology being advanced, it seems like the profit seems to be the issue. You have a Nikola Tesla quote here. How fitting, considering that one image I'll never forget seeing in like many documentaries I've seen regarding the guy trying to sell something or get something on the market, and the business tycoon tells him, "Tesla, your little box that gives energy to everybody on a block, there's no profit in that."
Now, what
Well,
he said to him was,
something like
there's
that.
no profits in antennas.
Mm. Yeah, and
Because Tesla wanted to sell an antenna to everybody. And they put it on their house, and then their house would be able to run all their appliances. And and J.P. Morgan said there's no profit in selling antennas. But
right. Well,
it's a different day now. It's actually good that we didn't get that technology, Andrew,
why is that a good thing?
because it was detrimental to cellular functioning.
Oh,
Because you would have to have all that strong EMF being broadcasted in order to run appliances and things. Okay? So it was a lot of broadcasting going on with his technology. All right, so I got into technology back a few decades ago and started studying Nikola Tesla, and I sold the Nikola Tesla patent books for years. His complete patent books. And I was at the Extraordinary Technology and rubbing elbows with all the people there who are into all this, and the coffee conference, the conference on future energy. And that's where I met Bill Alec, is through those people. And we came together 11 years ago. And we've been together, and we knew each other for a couple of years before that, when I was dating a friend of his who was into technology as well. And when Bill and I became an item together, I said to him, would it be at all possible for you to develop a free energy product that was bioenhancing or at least biocompatible rather than biodestructive, which is like everything we have today? And he said, yeah, I could do that. I said, really? You could make this technology you're working on bioenhancing possibly? He said, yeah, I would just have to adjust a few things. And I said, really? Well, that would be amazing. So he set about it and he developed some technology that is in our first division of our company. We have 3 divisions of the company. And we have now merged with the second company as of yesterday, which we're very excited about, called ISA Industries, ISAindustries.com. And we are auroratech.com, but we will be closing down Aurora Tech after our emergence is complete. So Aurora Tech was founded with 3 divisions, which we'll probably have in the next company emergence as well, and that is the biotech, the energy, and the space. They all go together because this technology has a field dampening effect. The best ways I can explain this technology to your listeners, this golden age technology, is to paint a picture for you. Picture everything in the universe has torque, and it twists around like the Earth does, and it spins. What makes the Earth spin? Torque. Okay. It's angular momentum, as they call it, this right angle turn. This right angle turn and angular momentum can also take you into other dimensions, which there are many, I am told. And it can also provide you with free energy. Let's get to it. Okay, so picture an energy pendulum swinging from left to right, because everything in the universe has a flux, even a rock. So this flux of life, of all living things, it's a vibratory frequency electromagnetic field that's inherent. And so up till now, all the history books on science seem to indicate that there's no talk beyond 0 point. 0 point was the all in the end all. We got to stop right there. There's nothing left to look at. It's 0 point. It's it. It's the end of the road. It's the center of it all. But it turns out that's not accurate. And I think they knew that it wasn't accurate when they took it out. Because there's indicators that at one time there was that understanding that there was energy beyond 0 point. So picture the pendulum swinging to the right, which is positive energy. What is positive energy? Well, it runs hot. And that's why your computer, your television, your cell phone, everything runs hot. It's not bioenhancing, it's biodestructive. So, it's not good for plants. It's not good for people or animals. And it's inefficient. And it's hard to transfer energy because it inefficiently transfers energy. Now, from 0 point into the negative, we have the completely opposite situation. The energy runs cold instead of hot. It's bioenhancing instead of biodestructive. And it is, I feel, the answer to the world's issues, because we can now run a transformer over unity. Over unity means more energy comes out than goes in. And we have now developed here at Aurora Tech, which is becoming one with ESA, we have developed a transformer that is over 140%. So that's exciting for us. And our next step is to close the loop on the energy and make it viable for being used on many different products in our society. starting out with the Go Power Up 500, which will allow us, the Go Power Up 500, to, take care of 100 watts anywhere, like, in the world. If you're in a cave or underwater or in a boat, on a boat, you'll suddenly be able to have a cell phone and a computer. It's life-saving. It's life-changing. So in Africa, they're trying to power up a light bulb and a computer so their kids can go to school online. Because they have a very weak structures over there. And so a Go Power Up 500 system, could be very useful in a place like on an island or in Africa and stuff, and South America, a lot of the places where they don't have a strong infrastructure in place. Even India, for example, they run their cell towers on diesel fuel generators, which are loud and use up a lot of gasoline. It's just horrible. So with our technology, we'll be able to live in a clean environment. We won't have to be dying from carbon dioxide poisoning. We'll be able to live on parts of the 2/3 of the world that is water. We'll be able to have boats and things like that are able to live on them. We'll also be able to run things that, now take a lot of energy, like greenhouses. And then we can provide enough food for everyone. If every town has its own greenhouses where people go and shop at the community groceries, and those groceries go out to specialty stores. I mean, that's a great addition to every community. And every community needs fresh produce. And the more we learn to grow inside of greenhouses, vertical farming is becoming very popular, and I'm very passionate about it. And the mushroom industry is using hydroponics, and aeroponics are becoming more popular. I'm a very big proponent of aeroponics. As a futurist, I see the opportunities that lie ahead for us to be able to spin things uphill. In past lifetimes, I remember on this planet of being a muse, where I help people realize their goals and their dreams. And I, like so many on this planet, have a goal and dream for planet Earth. And that's for it to be the most beautiful crown and the jewel of our Father's head. Crown jewel, as it's called in the Bible, planet Earth. It looks like an opal from the sky. It looks like a gorgeous opal. And this planet is truly lovely. And we don't want to see anything destroy it. And I even believe that comets that that people say are going to come our way and strike and all that. I think the Federation has techniques and abilities to shield us from that happening, and will shield us from that happening if we're on the right course, if humanity's on the right course of evolvement. Now, if we destroy ourselves through foolishness and we don't revere that which is divine, and the divine plan and the divine design, if you cannot see divine design around you, you are truly blind. Because it's the anatomy of the body, it's in a leaf, it's in a flower, it's in many things. Divine design is apparent all around us. And of course, there are those who cherish the divinity of what we have achieved in humanity as far as culture goes. Culture is everything. Culture is everything. If you have a culture that has high morals, high principles, a high level of kindness and regard for life, you're going to take a path of righteousness. But if you have a culture that is rude to one another in ways that are detrimental, as far as like taking people down to stripping them down. Our inner city schools are an atrocity. They are barely literate when they come out of them. It's bad. And then in some schools, they only have every third light on because they're on a budget. And so the kids are sitting there in the dark trying to read, and they're cold in the winter, and they got no heat hardly. And, you wonder what kind of teachers they have that'll sign up for that kind of crap. They don't have any school supplies nowadays. They have no art classes. They have no gym classes. They have no music classes. So what's left? They can barely speak English, many of them, when they get out, and they can barely write and barely do math. I had a store in the inner city of Detroit, and we used to hire cashiers. And one of the tests my husband would give them was, if you have 10 pieces of candy and they're 7 cents a piece, how much would it be? And these people, if they had to get out a pencil and paper to figure it out, he'd say, I'm sorry, I can't hire you because I don't have time for you to ring 7 cents in 10 times.
Well, hold on. Speaking of money and sense and
Yes,
money
so
making
people have to
sense,
be educated, don't they?
yes, they do. But when we're talking about the advancement of technology, you really can't talk about that without simultaneously mentioning the monetary factor. Because
Yes.
getting back to the whole, there is no profit in that thing. The guy told Tesla, well,
Right.
okay, how do all the civilizations out in the cosmos who don't use money? Alex Collier saying for years we're the only ones that do. How do they do it? Well, it's basically, to my understanding, a socialist system where there is no money and technology is not suppressed. Those two things have to have everything to do with making it possible to live in a society with
Now, what makes it possible for him to live like that? There is not indiscriminate, massive amounts of breeding like that's going on here in some parts of the world. You can raise the standard of living if you don't have indiscriminate population taking place, Popul- populating, indiscriminately. There has to be a plan in place before you populate. So, put the horse you can't put the cart before the horse. So, you can't say, well, okay, we've got billions of people here, and now we've got to figure out how to stop them from having so many children, and how do we play catch up, and how do we keep the environment clean, and how do we feed them all and house them all? I mean, it's a nightmare if you don't have population control. Population control is the only thing that makes all that possible. But, ask them in India why they're stacked up, on top of each other in the cities there. And they can't live in their countries because they don't have the country, because they have no infrastructures, many of these places. So it's a rough situation we're in. It's not as simple as I wish. I know, but one of the first steps we have to do is provide clean technology. That makes a lot of and if you have free energy, that makes it possible to clean up a lot of messes, like carbon monoxide poisoning and fracking, nuclear power that is so destructive. Now, fusion, there is fusion energy out there that is not destructive, which my new partner has been involved in and will be rolling out for the planet. So he would be somebody I would love for you to speak with. And he talks about this fusion technology, which is going to be the new power source that is not going to blow us up like the old nuclear power plants with the high levels of radiation.
okay, well, when we're talking about using technology to our advantage, one
Right.
has to wonder, can our own consciousness be considered a form of technology. I mean, George Cavazos has said, when I remember my past life building the pyramids, how did you do it? People would ask me, how'd you build the pyramids in your past life? How'd you and the people that came to Earth to do it? Oh, he says, we just intermingled with the energy of the Earth. We were communicating with the consciousness of the Earth and our surrounding environment, and it when you do that, moving those big blocks around is a piece of cake. When you have other things that, well, utilize their own consciousness, so that you don't really have to get the big machines out to do all the dirty work. There's
Just
other
do it all
forces.
with your mind, he's saying.
So, well, not just your mind, but other forces out there, not just Mother Earth, but I guess maybe the rest of the cosmos says, because everything's in one place at one time.
Harnessing the energies of the environment.
Yeah, that's the secret, he said, to building the pyramids. It's not so much like the whole Edward Leeds Golden thing where you're using bioacoustic technology. Okay, maybe there was some use for that in the like the lower factions that weren't as
Yeah.
consciously evolved, but the really consciously evolved ones knew that you really wouldn't need that. You could just use the consciousness of your environment to do it, and
Well,
basically
look at
have
that coral castle there in Florida. Are you familiar
yeah
with the coral
yeah Edward
castle?
Leeds Golden's Coral Castle, the guy who said in Florida who said he knew the technology of the pyramids, that he used it to build that. Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I've been there a number of times. It's quite superb. And, the fact that he did it all, he moved these big blocks of coral in secret at night. And nobody ever saw him move them. It's rather interesting. Interesting phenomena that he was aware of, obviously. And he took to his grave. He never revealed it, as far as we know.
Yeah, and it's thought though that it was some sort of a bioacoustic technology that did it, but we don't know
Well,
for sure.
that would have been a little tricky if you think about it, to just aim it just perfectly and cut those stones just perfectly. I mean,
Yes.
cutting the stones, he's got a coral door that opens and closes. That's just incredible. All you just push it with one finger. It swings open and close. It weighs tons. So, he hung that door. That's amazing. So, nobody really knows if he had extraterrestrial help or if he was an ET secretly, activated maybe by higher forces. Well, all we know is this: whatever he did has not been able to be duplicated thus far.
Right, right. Okay, you mentioned ET, something I wanted to ask you long at the very beginning of this interview, but it slipped my mind. You say you communicate with the Galactic Federation. Is that the
Right.
name of your? Okay. Um, there are at least two um, ET councils that go by the name Galactic Federation of Light. One is malevolent that masquerades as benevolent, and the other one is strictly benevolent. I don't know if there's more, but with that being said, how do you know you're not being suckered by the former one?
Well, I don't worry about that because everything's been spot on. You know, my life has been divinely protected and guided, and so I've been very pleased with how it's been going. I don't know what you're referring to as the masqueraders in as far as technology goes. The Federation is, you know, way far beyond anybody else. And as far as spiritual evolvement goes, that as well. Now, the lower energy sources, they have a lot of inconsistencies when they channel through people. And they have also usually a lot of bad news on a consistent level. They very seldomly predict anything good that happens, which has just been the opposite with my connections. They're always telling me, hey, heads up, this is going to happen and it's going to be great, and, they're always there to help and to elevate. and to serve mankind. So I think that's the basic difference there is intent and purpose.
Okay, but when you say that they're to serve and protect, well, apparently some people that are being divinely guided aren't necessarily being divinely protected, and perhaps you could help make sense of why this is allowed to happen. Classic
Well,
example
I
of
don't
this.
know, each individual case.
Well, let me give you one a good individual case that I think proves the point. Sheldon Neidl from paoweb.org. He talks with a strict the at least council that's strictly benevolent that goes by the name Galactic Federation of
Wasn't
Light.
Sheldon from Hawaii?
I'm not sure where he was from, but he
Yeah.
was attacked by some sort of a
Well,
direct
he had
energy.
a lot of things going on. You don't know his personal life.
Oh, okay, but what
He,
confuses me
he
is
indulged in drugs and alcohol, and he had a lot of things going on.
okay,
And
but
as a child, he was beat quite a bit, and he had a personality, kind of, you might say, separation occur from his brutal childhood. And there was a lot of things going on with Sheldon Idle.
okay, but what about the direct energy weapon attack? One has to wonder why did his ET contacts just leave him out to dry? Why didn't they divinely protect him like they are divinely protecting you? Why they
Well,
just
what makes you think that that even occurred?
well that's what makes you think it's not what occurred? Okay, I mean, what are you saying that it must be a lie because his ET
I
friends
said,
would
what
have?
makes you think it for sure that that occurred?
I don't know. I don't know that
Right.
anything you're saying on this show
All
is
right.
true, but I
You
have to take it
know,
at face value.
I
So
talked to his cousin
yeah.
who knew him his whole life, and she said he's had many serious mental issues.
Oh.
So, you know, and she wasn't saying it to be mean. So, you know, some of these people, they have these personality, kind of fragmentations that take place. And part of them can be accurate, and another part can be horribly inaccurate. So I don't know. I can't address other people other than myself and the people I'm close to and what that we've experienced who are loyal to the higher Christed principles and truths. Those of us who are on that level have had divine protection throughout our lives and it can attest to it. And, that's where I stand. That's why I feel that as a Federation volunteer here in Earth Embodiment, that my mission and purpose is to prepare humanity for contact with the Federation's evolved, higher principled beings. I asked him once upstairs, I said, what did I do as did I have anything I did particularly before I took Earth embodiment? Did I have things I did on the higher realms that you could tell me about? And they said, yes, you were a cultural ambassador, which I feel that I am this lifetime as well. That, my job is to spin things uphill to the greatest extent of truth, beauty, enlightenment, and love and prosperity and beauty for all. It's it's very important to me that those things remain sacred and that they are treated with respect so that the culture is once again elevated to where it used to be before this last 60-year assault upon humanity that came through the television sets. And this assault has been really effective in guiding humanity into a way of thinking. And when I was a little kid, we had the Mickey Mouse Club. and it was all about spying on your neighbors and wearing the same hats and t-shirts and all dressing alike. And then they started the blue jean era, which was like everyone dressed like old farmers in these old crappy blue jeans and looked like shit. And that was part of the dumbing down of America. Okay? That was part of bringing them down. See, don't dress up. It's too bourgeois. Just let it all hang out. Don't bother cutting your hair and cleaning up. If you look like how people used to dress in the 40s, and then the radical change that has taken place in our society after the TV set, it's like amazing difference how the devolvement in the pride of one's appearance. And got to the point that a friend of mine went to a New Year's Eve dance this New Year's Eve and said, "My God, people were there in tennis shoes and stuff." You know, and so that's what I'm saying. The New World Order would like to see a devolvement, but I'd like to see, and what everyone I know would like to see, is a evolvement where people love each other and respect themselves and put their best foot forward every day and make themselves the best they can with what they have to work with. And that's all one can be expected to do. If even if you do jobs that are not considered to be a high level of intellect involved, there's always a level of concern that has to be there for your job to make it sure that the person does their job right. And if that level of love and consideration isn't there, everybody's affected around that person. And, so all of life has to be more cherished, and the people around us have to be more cherished. I have often said that in our society, one of the problems is most people don't know how to give love freely. And, just they act like there's a machine counting out, whoa, you got to pay heavy. You've given out way a lot of love today, and that's going to cost you a lot. I mean, it seems like people put a price on love that's insane. And I'd like to see love given more freely to one another. Societies who are able to relax and work together with one another do not have those problems. But when you let a society crumble and you don't have jobs for people that pay well, society then becomes a cutthroat place of lack rather than of abundance. And then people will not behave as well as they can behave as when they're supported by the culture around them. And, that's what I'd like to see restored to our society is just this reverence for, for, and respect for oneself. And it's gotten to an all-time low right now. People are committing suicide because of a lack of support they're feeling in our society. And other problems are going on that are related to that, to our culture morale being very low at this time. And it's getting better these last few years as far as people on drugs and stuff. This year has been a turning point and that things have gotten better, but still, this country is with 70% of the children right now do not have a father living at home. So that's a sad state of affairs that children are not growing up to know what it's like to grow up in a loving family.
Yeah, that is very very depressing to hear one say that. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm a little bit of a football fan. Philadelphia Eagles got pissed off with their quarterback getting decked out of the game by this dude named Jadeveon Clowney, very dirty football player. They say it turns out he grew up without a father. Wonder if that's it. What turned out make him such a dirty player that made him
It
the number one
really
overall pick in the
destroys,
draft.
it really
Yeah.
destroys a child not to have both a mother and a father. From the father, they learn strength. They learn, they learn the art of being silent and just being steadfast and going for what you need to do in life. And the father is there as the pillar of the home. Okay, the foundation holds up the foundation. And the mother's there to make the home a lovely, cozy place for everyone to hang out in and to grow in and learn in and prosper in and be fed by her beautiful meals and stuff. When you don't have that kind of interaction and ability to create those dynamics, it's very destructive to to these children. So we're seeing that nowadays, the result of that children nowadays don't know where to look. They don't know if God is like Santa Claus, some made up story. What's going on? They can't figure it out. Churches now Christian churches are becoming like co- concert halls for bands to play on Sunday. And, people show up in their t-shirt and, and tennis shoes, and they don't even, uh, they don't even talk to each other after church. They don't have a social hour, most churches anymore. And it's kind of creepy. I'd like to see a little bit more higher elevation. I'd like to see all this move uphill a little bit. I'd like
Well,
to
one
see
possible.
people care about each other a lot more and get to know their neighbors, but they're so afraid their neighbor's a psychopath. They're afraid to.
Yes. Well, a couple things I want to point out there regarding that. Had a recent incident with that Jekyll and Hyde neighbor of sorts up the street, clean up litter on the street, threw the garbage in his garbage can. He saw me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, throwing away litter. You don't mind if I use your garbage can?" He said, "Oh, thank you." 24 hours later, I was picking up bottle caps and a couple cigarette butts I saw in front of his driveway and about to throw them on the can. He was driving out in his car and he looked at me and he said, "Yo, dude, get away from my driveway. Get away from my driveway. You got 5 minutes. You hear me? Get away from my driveway." He actually said 5 minutes, not 5 seconds. So, boy, he's got no sense of time. But anyhow, well, what causes people to be Jekyll and Hyde like that? I don't know. And also,
Well, people are under tremendous amount of pressure right now. The
right,
cost of a loaf of bread's $5. A gallon of gas is a lot of money. Everything's a lot of money. And I think the pressure the average person feels to make it through all this without, maybe the best skill sets is got to be really rough on a lot of people. And I know everybody I know has been affected by the economy's ups and downs.
right. What some solutions that I've heard suggested, but this is kind of controversial because the whole idea of have to have more respect for oneness. Well, do people who get very picky when they're copyrighted material and their work is plagiarized, when they get picky about that, are they not really showing oneness, or are they showing oneness? I mean, if we were in a world of oneness, you wouldn't expect there to be such a thing as copyright. You wouldn't expect people to sue others for plagiarism, because everybody knows that we're all one, so we are free to share those things, and there's no need to like accuse people of stealing others' ideas or violating some sort of a so-called copyright that some say it was a stupid idea to make that thing even exist. Well,
Okay, so let's get to it here. First of
okay,
all, did you ever read the book Atlas Shrugged or hear of
no,
it?
only I don't know about it, but never read it.
Okay. Well, read the book. It's about a super genius who cannot integrate himself into society because there's no respect for the genius. Okay? Once there's no payoff for a genius and respect for a genius, people cease to function. Okay? Because there's no accolades that are going to come their way. It's just like if you're treated like an average person and you're not average, it's not going to go well. So that's why it's very important to respect the individuality, and the genius must be respected. The and the geniuses of our time are out there, and they must be allowed to reign free. And they are coming forth now into the technology field, like Bill Alec. And one of the things that Bill and I are proud to do is to bring forth this technology. We already have patent approved on a self-charging energy management system software that will allow us to run our system of all right, so in the future, we're not going to plug our refrigerator into the wall, our washer, dryer, any of that stuff. We're going to everything's going to have this self-charging energy management system. Picture like a flashlight, only with a super cap in it, capacitor instead of a battery, and a self-charging energy management system that allows you to be able to leave it on for 50 years. So that's what we're going to have in the future, is this kind of technological ability. And we'll never have any wires in the walls anymore. We won't have light bulbs on our streets that are attached by copper wires. Everything will have a self-charging energy management system in it. Out to see us from Japan and Korea, the light bulb industry people have come to see us. They're very anxious for us to license our technology to them, to be able to light bulbs without, copper wires attached to them. That is the future that's coming our way, and it's coming our way very soon. So I'm very excited about it, and happy to be a part of the development process. If people want to get involved with us, we have a small founders group of people, and we have physicists, and we have engineers, and we have attorneys, and patent attorneys, and a lot of cool people on our advisory board and on for us. So I'm very thrilled to be a part of this development. We hope to have products out here for the fast growing technology here this year. We do have testing going on now for there's growers or people who know growers in the cannabis industry. They can increase their profits dramatically by implementing our technology into their growing systems for hydroponics, aeroponics, and soil growth. So we are allowing growers now to do testing with us, and we will be allowing them to purchase them for their grows here after the testing is over with. And we also create nano water with our technology already, and we have this ready. We have a nano water conditioning system, and you can just set it on your countertop in your kitchen and separates your water molecules. Usually water molecules are clumped together from 18 to 24 molecules. But with our technology's field dampening effect that we talked about, this allows the water molecules to relax and separate. Therefore, you are hydrating your body better, and you feel much more hydrated, and you're able to absorb your nutrients from your supplements and your food much more readily, much more easily. And it flushes out toxins out of the body a lot better as well. So our investors who come in get a gift of a water conditioning system, and we also have vitality pads. And this has that technology in a pad. You put it behind your back or behind your pillow at night when you sleep, and it creates this field dampening effect, which is very apparent, and it helps for cellular rejuvenation. And we have pet pads as well for pets. So we're going to that's where we're at right now in our development progress and stage, and we're very happy. We're going to be accelerating with everything here this coming year. So those are people out there who are looking for a great investment, I think we're it. If you hold on to our stock for a little while, I think you're going to see magnificent growth take place as we roll out our product line here in the near future. And I really thank you for this opportunity to connect with you and your audience. It's been awesome to be here today.
Yeah, it's been awesome to have you on, and you kind of read my mind, knowing that I was going to be probably finishing up with the fast grow hemp thing, because that's like the one thing we didn't really get a chance to
Yeah, that website's
discuss.
fastgrowhemp.com. And it's meant to be used for cannabis, really, but cannabis isn't really federally legal yet. So we own that name, Fast Grow Cannabis, as
Well,
well, but we haven't
hold
put
on
it
a
up
minute.
there.
Have you heard? I know a lot of people say that Santos Bonacci's lost his marbles since he's become the flat Earth poster boy, but one intriguing thing that he did actually say was that the word marijuana has a commercial specific definition, but cannabis doesn't. And if that's the case, that is of huge practical significance because, whenever you're being charged in the courts with some sort of a victimless crime, like a drug crime, like growing cannabis, or I should say like growing marijuana, they're always accusing you of doing something in a commercial capacity, which means that the key to defending yourself and not getting prosecuted in those bogus cases with bogus charges, which government has no authority to impose upon the common people, is to object to the commercial nexus. And if marijuana is specifically commercial and cannabis is not, then well, therein lies the one of the big keys to getting a lot of people who get busted for growing marijuana. No, I'm growing cannabis, so there's a difference. I'm not committing any sort of a thing that you can regulate or punish me for. Now, is this something you think maybe you might want to consider looking into since you're in the growing hemp thing, or do you want to just stay out of the whole
First of
law
all, I
aspect?
don't grow anything.
Oh, okay.
I just provide growing technology to the growers. So I'm not really involved in the big fight, but whether you call it cannabis or marijuana really doesn't bother me. But the industry prefers calling it cannabis because marijuana was the Mexican name for it, which they feel is derogatory because of that, because it was made to look. They came out with these films that showed these lazy Mexicans smoking pot, which they called marijuana. And if you don't want to be lazy and go out of your mind, and women screaming and things like that, and a man killing somebody, and all this crazy stuff they had in these propaganda films that they came out with in the 50s about marijuana. So, it's got a bad connotation because of that. So, if the people want to change it to cannabis and makes them happier, I'm all for it.
All right, but you didn't make clear you don't want to get involved in the law aspect. So, all right,
Well,
just thought I'd get it.
whatever you call it really doesn't matter.
Well, I know that's not the case at all
As
in law
the law,
when it comes
we're
to.
not going to be able to grow it without a license until it gets to the point where they say, okay, you can each grow like four bushes, or something like plants or something like they have in Canada. But I don't know what's going on there with Canada. It's so messed up over there in Canada. Some investors have poured millions of dollars into Canadian, grows, and then the government is. I don't know if they've made up their mind whether or not you can each have your four plants or not, but it pretty much squishes the business for a lot of people. Not to say everybody's going to grow it because most people can't grow it. It's difficult to grow. You have to have the female plants and you have to know how to trim them right and all that stuff. You got to become an expert horticulturist to do it right. And these places that grow it professionally, I mean, they don't really know what the heck they're doing. So they're kicking it. But so the average person, I don't know if they're capable of, growing something that they really find to be substantially good enough for them. So who knows? But, I do know that a lot of big money has gone into the industry, and it'll be interesting to see the direction it takes here in the U.S.
Right. I think it's only gonna get more and more acceptable as time goes on.
I
Just
had Fox. Do you know who he is? The guy
who?
Fox from the president of Mexico, the
Vicente,
ex-president.
what? It's pronounced fall because X's are pronounced as like H's in Spanish, right? That's the guy you're talking about, Vicente Fall, former president of Mexico,
Well, they called him Vicente Fox when he was over here.
because they don't know how to pronounce an X in
They
Spanish.
introduced
But
him. When they introduced him, that's how they introduced him.
right,
And he spoke here at our little group here that we have in Arizona called META. It stands for what does it stand for? Medical. No, Marijuana Institute of Technical Advancement. And they have a lot of the big growers and all these members and stuff. They are present. And he came to speak to us here in Arizona about providing pot from Arizona to Mexico because they weren't going to have enough for all the tourists who come down there to smoke because they're making it legal, totally legal in Mexico, to buy it, to smoke it, anywhere you want. So it's totally legal there now after the first of the year. So they said they didn't have enough pot for everybody, so they want us here in Arizona to grow it and send it down there to them.
cool. Well, by the way, we've almost reached the 2 hour mark in this interview. Let's not
Oh,
go
it's been
past it
fun.
because people have lousy attention spans, and going past 2 hours kind of costs you a big audience. A long story on that regard. But
Well,
anyhow,
Galactic Federation, I talk about it in my book. It's called Prepare for the Landings.
yeah, please
And
plug
that's
your
about,
books and stuff.
yes, and Prepare for the Landings is my book I have out about human appearing ETs and some of my experiences with them. So, I would love for you to talk to Hunter Bork, and he can talk to you about, outer space and the development that's going on right now with ESA. And it's quite interesting. The timeline that we're living in right now is very exciting. And I hope everyone has a wonderful year this year of productivity and good health.
Yes, I hope so too. And Chinese New Year, of course, will be starting on the new moon on the 24th, whatever time that new moon is
What
going
is
to
it?
be.
What Chinese year is it going to be this
The
year?
rat. We're going into the year
The
of
rat?
the metal
Oh,
rat.
that's me. It's my year.
Oh,
Well,
well, in
whoopee,
Chinese calendar, just be aware that when it's your year, that does not in any way, shape, or form imply that
Oh,
it's
it
going to be
did in the
the best
past. I've
year.
always had a great year, rat year.
Oh, you have? Okay, well, people,
Oh, yeah.
the word on the
Awesome
street is
rat year.
people's years. It turns out to be one of the most
Well,
productive, but not
I'm
necessarily the
spinning mine
funnest.
uphill. You can spin yours down.
Okay, I have the tiger, which is going to be in
Okay, Tiger.
2022, I believe. But
All right. Well,
okay,
you don't
pleasure
see
having you
many
on.
tigers in Manhattan, but there are a lot of rats.
Right. Okay, I can't deny that. And even more Baltimore here. Baltimore seems to be infested with rats more so than anyone else. So,
Oh,
okay.
the characteristic of the rat is that they're clever and they can exist through a lot of things that other people can't get through. And I think that's very true because when I had an astrologer look at my chart, every time they've always said, "Wow, you should have died many times." And
Rats
I
also
said, "Yeah, you're correct."
rats also a delicacy in Japan. I believe they eat them in Japan in some restaurants, and they say it's pretty tasty. One of the
Oh my
things to put on your
God in
bucket
heaven,
list.
don't tell me that. They'll
Oh,
never eat there now.
okay. Okay. Well, anyhow, pleasure having you
All
on. I
right. Well,
promise to
thank
upload
you
this
so
by
much,
midnight
Andrew.
tomorrow. Great having you on, and send me a link also to that guy's name, how to spell it, and all that guy that you want me to have on the show. And
Oh yeah, I'll make sure you get Hunter's information. And
oh, and you still have enough friend accepted me on Facebook. I sent you a friend request if you want to maybe get to that. I see Alfred Weber posts on your page a lot, but
yeah, well, he does maybe, but I don't even go there very much because frankly, I'm a pretty private person,
oh,
and it's like I don't know, that Facebook is so abusive. It's so abused by so many people.
well, I look past that. I just use it to get into the Matrix to beat the Matrix. So that's
Okay, I'll remember that.
all right. Take care.
All
Namaste.
right, thank you
Pleasure.
again. Good night.